Okay guys, so today's video is about operations on integers. So we are going to be doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So let's start with the rules for addition and subtraction. So these are rules you have to memorize. So whenever you have two negative numbers, your answer will be negative. Every time you have a negative and a positive, it depends. And that answer will depend on the bigger number. So let's look at some few examples and let's apply our rules so you can memorize them. So for our first example, we have negative 5 minus 2. So remember, when both numbers are negative, your final answer will be negative. And what you do with that 5 and that 2 is you add them. So 5 plus 2 is 7, and you know your answer is negative because both of your numbers are negative. If you need an example on a number line, here's 0. Let's start with negative 5. And if we subtract 2, we're moving 2 units to the left. So 1, 2. You were at negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. Okay, our second example, negative 7 plus 2. So every time your numbers are a different sign, you subtract the numbers. So 7 minus 2 is 5. And to get the sign for the 5, you always look at the bigger number. The bigger number here is 7. Since the 7 is negative, you're going to have more negatives left over. If you need an example on a number line, negative 7 is right here, and you are adding 2. When you add 2, you go to the right 2 units. You were at negative 7, so if you go to the right, this is negative 6, and you land at negative 5. Example 3, 5 minus 7. So again, you have a positive and a negative. So when you have a positive and a negative, you subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. And now we have to figure out if it's positive or a negative 2. So go back to your bigger number. Bigger number is 7, and that 7 is negative. Therefore, you have more negatives left over. If you need the number line, you are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You start at 5, and we are going to subtract 7, which means 7 units to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this lands you at negative 2. Again, we have a negative plus a positive, so we subtract the numbers. 15 minus 2 is 13. To get the sign, go back and look for the bigger number. The bigger number is 15. That 15 is a negative, so you have more negatives left over. If you need the number line, 0 is right here. We are starting at negative 15. We are adding 2, so we're going to go 2 units to the right. So 1, 2, and that lands you at negative 13. Okay, the fifth example, we have a positive and a negative, so we know we're going to subtract. So 10 minus 8 is 2, and let's figure out the sign for this 2. So let's find our bigger number. Our bigger number is 10. That 10 is negative, so you have more negatives left over. If you need the number line, we are going to start at 8. And we are going to go 10 units to the left because it's minus 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That lands you at negative 2. Our sixth example, we have a negative 5 minus 3. So both of those are negative. So what you do is you add those two when they're both negative, and then it makes a big negative number and it keeps the sign. So you are at negative 5. And if you subtract 3, you go 3 units to the left. So 1, 2, 3. And that leaves you at negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. Okay, right here you have a positive 9 minus 19. So they're different signs, so you subtract them. Always bigger number first. So 19 minus 9 is 10. And then let's get the sign for that 10. So go back, find the bigger number. That bigger number is negative, so you have more negatives left over. Okay, now let's go over the rules for multiplication and division. So every time you are multiplying and dividing, when you have two negatives, so if it's a negative times a negative, you always get a positive. Same thing with division. When you have a negative divided by a negative, you also get a positive. So these are rules you guys have to memorize. Second rule, when you multiply a negative times a positive, your answer will always be negative. And the order doesn't matter. So down here, if you have a positive times a negative, your answer will also be negative because of this negative. And those are the same rules for division. When you have a negative divided by a positive, your answer will be negative. Or if it's the other way around, your answer is still negative. So what you basically have to memorize for multiplication and division is if it's a negative times a negative or a negative divided by a negative, your answer will be positive. Or if it's a negative and a positive, your answer will be negative for both multiplication and division. So let's try some examples. So 5 times negative 2. So first just multiply the numbers. 5 times 2 is 10. Since our 2 is negative 2, our final answer will be negative 10. Negative 4 times negative 8. So let's just multiply 4 times 8. We get 32. And we have a negative times a negative. So remember, negative times negative is positive. So our final answer is positive 32. Negative 7 times negative 8. So just multiply 8 times 7. You get 56. Let's check out the signs. It's negative times negative. So remember, negative times negative is positive. So our final answer is 56. Example 4. 10 times negative 2. So 10 times 2 is 20. And since our 2 is negative, then our whole problem's negative. Negative 5 times negative 8. So 8 times 5 is 40. Let's check our signs. Negative times negative is positive. So our answer is positive 40. Division. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And since our 2 is negative, our final answer is negative. 50 divided by 5 is 10. And since it's negative divided by negative, your answer is positive 10. Last example here. 20 divided by 2 is 10. And since our 20 is negative, our answer is negative 10. So here's a list of mixed examples. So go ahead and pause the video and try these, and then come back and look at the solutions. So first example, 5 minus 2. So since they have two different signs, 5 minus 2 is 3. Let's check see if it's a positive 3 or a negative 3. Our bigger number is 5, so our final answer is positive 3. Negative 5 times negative 2. So first, 5 times 2 is 10. Let's check out our sign. We have a negative times a negative. Negative times negative is positive, so positive 10 is our answer. Number 3, 10 divided by negative 2. So first of all, 10 divided by 2 is 5. And since that 2 is negative, your final answer is negative. Negative 7 minus 3. So they are both negative, so you add these numbers. 7 plus 3 is 10. And since they're both negative, the answer stays negative. Negative 10 plus 2. They are different signs, so you subtract them. 10 minus 2 is 8. The 10 is bigger, and that 10 is negative, so your answer is negative. 2 minus 10. So they're opposite signs, so you subtract these two. 10 minus 2 is 8. Let's figure out the sign. Our bigger number is 10. That 10 is negative, so our answer is negative 8. On the right side, negative 5 divided by negative 5. So first of all, 5 divided by 5 is 1. And division rule states that if it's a negative divided by a negative, you get a positive answer. 7 minus 2, that one's really easy. 7 minus 2 is 5. But let's just double check our sign. So to check the sign, find the bigger number, which is 7. 7 is positive, so your answer is positive 5. Negative 2 minus 7. So those are both negative, so your answer will stay negative, and 7 plus 2 is 9. Negative 2 plus 7. So they're opposite operations, so you will subtract them. 7 minus 2 is 5. And notice that I always subtract the smaller number from the bigger number. So 7 minus 2 is 5. Let's get the sign. Find your bigger number, which is 7. That 7 is positive, so you have more positives left over. Negative 5 times 2. So again, multiply 5 times 2, which is 10. And since the 5 is negative, your final answer is negative. Negative 10 minus 3. So they are both negative, so you add them, you get 13, and your answer stays negative.